Hi, I'm Alvaro Henrique and we are back to our course. We are working on Luys Milan's first Pavana. This is a very interesting piece and we have here an opportunity to work in a lot of stuff of Renaissance music. And I wish you to enjoy this opportunity because this is a great entrance door to a whole new world you probably had no idea it existed. Let's start from the very first beginning. The first information that you are going to find on the score is Pavana the first. Um, what is a Pavana? Have you ever asked that? I'll help you with that answer, but please do look for more information, especially on music dictionaries. Pavana is a Renaissance dance, a very popular dance from the Renaissance, and probably had an origin in Padova, an Italian city. Uh, this possible origin is fundamented mainly because of the piece's name. We must remember that until quite recently, in historical terms, uh, illiteracy in European countries were very high. So, for someone from a different country, listening to someone in a foreign language with a foreign accent saying a word and hearing differently and then changing the spelling is something very common. So, let's say an Italian goes up France and he says that he likes the dance this Pavana. And then the French is there listening and we Pavana. And then the name changes very easily. I'm just making something. Well, maybe it was a bad joke, but in fact that illiteracy does that. And but we are not sure that this is the origin of the Pavana. No matter which the orange was, the Pavana was a very popular dance because it allowed couples to talk in each other. It was a quite easy dance and was danced in pairs, so it was a great opportunity for a new couple to talk while dancing. In the Pavana, the man usually has this gentleman position with his hand in this position. Then the lady would place her hand above his. They would stay side by side and they would form a long line of couples. The first couple would then do the choreography which the following couples would follow. Um, the main step of the Pavana, which had several variations, this is not a dance class, just for you to get a notion on how the dance is danced, is step together, step together, step, step, step together. But as a couple, side by side, and usually very slowly. Therefore, you have opportunity to talk to your couple. Okay? Uh, so this is the Pavana. We are working on that. Then we have the following information is Luys Milan. Who was Luys Milan? Luys Milan was a vihuela player and he was the one who published the very first plucked string uh, album of works in history. It's exactly from where this piece is. So he published a book which nowadays we call it El Maestro, the teacher. But the full name is literally 1 page long and something like 4 books of vihuela and of songs, also known as the teacher In this book, you can learn how to improvise and play several dances in several tones. And with the grace of God, this publication was made, and the sponsorship of our Lord Prince Don John, and so on. And so nowadays we just say El Maestro, the teacher. Okay, there are more Pavanas there. I don't know why. The Pavana first was when Segovia published them. He chose 6, and this was the very first one of the 6 that he published. Why 6? Why that order? I have no idea. But there are more than 6, and they are not published in the order in the original book by Milan than the order that Segovia published. Nowadays, there are several websites like imslp.org, which you can have free access to those courses, and including some versions that are more friendly for modern eyes, not only the faithful copy, the facsimile copy of the original publication, which may be a little hard to read if it's the first time you are getting in touch with old books. It's free, it's public domain, so you can go to that website and enjoy what is there. One more thing that we have to talk, well, there are lots of stuff that we have to talk about Renaissance anyway. This piece was published in tablature, and the tablature of the time was very different from the modern tablature. In modern tablature, the publisher writes where you place your fingers and you work on the rhythm. It's on you, listen to the song until you get it. On that Renaissance tablature, the rhythm is written. However, it's written only when to play. It's not written how long the notes should last. So the length of the notes, it's up to the performer. And in that piece, there are some particular measures that can lead to very different choices. For example, on the third system, I'll play on one measure before. I'll play the last measure of the second system. We are here, A, E, A, C, then D, F sharp, A, and then E, E, E. On the tablature, it would be written only that. You can think that, oh, but we have a voicing here. And because of that voicing, makes sense to try to last the A as much as possible. That's right, but that's an interpretation of yours. You may think that you can let the listener guess this voicing without actually holding the note. You can decide, and you can decide, how long you should last. Maybe, okay, I want to last long, but only the beginning. Then I'll not hold on that uncomfortable position for that long. I'll just change as soon as possible. I'll pluck the new notes and then release as fast as possible. That's up to you. It's quite free. I don't have a clear answer about that. There are pros, there are other problems on each one of the choices. You have to decide what you want, okay? I'll not interfere on that. One more thing that in Renaissance music, especially in a dance piece, it's very important to stress the beat. And this was so important that in all Renaissance, in every plucked instrument played back then, be it the lute, be it the Renaissance guitar, which there was a Renaissance guitar, and we have publications for Renaissance guitar in Spain and in France, mostly on France. Be it also the lute, the vihuela, in all of those instruments on the Renaissance, the beat was always played with the thumb to make sure that the beat or the strong fractions of the beat would always be sounding strong. And the upbeat or the weaker fractions of the beat would always be played with the eye. So it would mean, playing from the beginning, that this is how they would finger their right hand. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 with thumb and with eye, 2, 1 with thumb, A with eye, 2 with thumb, A, and with eye, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Remember, this is a 2 per 2 piece, okay? Then the next phrase, it would be 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. Okay, so the fingering was decided by the tempo, not by how easier it would be to play according to our physiognomy. I recommend you to work that technique because this is not a very fast and hard piece to work that. And by making this work, the way that you hear the tempo will change for life. Your brain will never hear music or listen or play music the same time after making that kind of work. And this is very important because in all Western music, classical and mostly popular, it's very important to have a very strong sense of the beat. So by changing your fingering, by deciding your fingering on the beat, not on the easiness, you will have a very different sense of the beat. However, if for you that would be too hard, or if you have a deadline to fill, you can choose the easy fingering, but I would like to invite you to even so still play sounding as if you would do this traditional right hand fingering. So that very same phrase would be with the easier fingering. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. Okay? So you're doing a different fingering, the normal traditional fingering, but you're not playing. Okay? That would be interesting enough. One more thing is, in the Renaissance music, it was traditional to improvise, to embellish the melody. Nowadays we call that Renaissance ornamentation or ornamentation, but at the time it was called glossa. And we have two very famous treatises of glossas, one by Tomás de Santa Maria and the other by Diego Ortiz, which they both work a little bit like a book of cliches. So they have some suggestions of glosses already written, and then you can pick and choose which one you would like to add to your performance. Bear in mind that there are some rules, very little rules to follow. The first and the most important rule is the embellishment should last the very same duration of the note you are embellishing. So, for example, if I'm embellishing this B here, or the last measure of the first system, that piece, that note should last 2 tempos. It's a 2/2 measure, remember. So it lasts 2 tempos. So my embellishment should also last 2 tempos. So instead of playing 1, 2, 1, 2, I'm playing 1 and 2 and 1, 2. Okay? Second rule is there can't be a change of harmony. But by change of harmony, I mean the notes actually there. So if you want to embellish, ornamentate the first measure, bear in mind that you have only A and E. There's no C. There's no C sharp. It's A and E. So the notes, the embellishment that you create should have as higher note, notes on the beat, so the important notes that we pay attention to and may make us hear as a complete chord should only be A and E, no C. Okay? Third rule is if you make a jump, the next note will have to be a neighbor note on the opposite direction. So if you decide on the first measure to jump from A to E, the following note must be a D. There's no option on that. If you jump the other way around, if you jump to the lower E, the next note will be an F. There's no other option. Okay? Other rule is there can't be any I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to call it in English. In Portuguese is syncope and counter tempo. So there's off the beat tempo choices, something like there can't be things like that. So there can be no, you have to 1 and 2 and 1. The beat should always be present when you ornamentate. So it's a rule about rhythm, not about notes. And there is a last rule, which is a good rule to follow, is the last measure you have free tempo. You can ornamentate for as long as you want. Okay? So you can go to imslp.org, check there the treatise by Tomás de Santa Maria, by Diego Ortiz. They have facsimiles, which can be a little hard to read for our modern eyes, but they have also editions more friendly for modern eyes, and you just copy there. And you should ornamentate especially on those repeated chords. I believe, in my opinion, that Milan wrote this Pavana with these repeated chords to stimulate the student to ornamentate in those chords, because for Renaissance music, listening to those repeated chords, it's just boring, especially considering what Renaissance music can do, because these embellishments, it was the norm. Everyone did that. It was part of being a musician. So I think it was to stimulate a student to ornamentate. You should that also for the very same reason. Okay, already too much stuff to work on. How I suggest you to work that piece. First, play only the notes calmly, making sure that you are changing as fast as possible. So think before the movement and then play, but think before. And don't worry about how long you think. Worry that the movement you should do is fast. Because then making that thinking time faster is easy. Making your fingers that are used to go in slow motion to different notes, speed them up is harder. So think a lot, take your time thinking, but change notes as fast as possible. Okay? Then after that, you should work on the polyphony. So play and sing along each voice. It would be better if you sing also with note names. But even if you just sing la la la, would be good enough, because you have to listen in your mind the voicing. It's a different thing when you think A, E major, E minor, E major. Then there you think A, G's, A, G's. Then wow, this G sharp is very interesting. There's some stuff here. So you play different. It's richer because you are thinking richer. You're not thinking just one chord with one information. You're thinking there are different voices, and you listen. A, A, se, ha. And you also A, gis, A, gis. And also A, e, A. And because of that, you play better. So you have to think all the voices, because then you're playing that way. What you think is the most in musical expression, in musical communication, that you can possibly get. Sometimes to play more expressive, to communicate more things with music, you must improve how you think the music, not how you play the music. Then, after you're playing the piece as written, go to those treaties and write the ornamentations at least on the very first of each repeated note, each repeated chord, and on the last measure of the piece, last chord of the piece. The last measure, it's a free tempo ornamentation. So that's it. Great piece from the Renaissance that you can work on very lots of stuff from the Renaissance that will improve you as a musician forever. Have fun.